Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Matt the Family Guy, Kent the Cat Guy, Jacqueline from JP Mint, and Greg the Single Guy, bringing you episodes from around the world about the best kept secret in education. You've got it, international teaching. Welcome to the show. All right, you ready, babe? Everyone take a deep breath. Here we go. Chris, do you have any questions before we start?
No, I'm just I didn't shower, guys, so I'm just gonna go.
I thought something
We got that
smelled.
on tape.
On the
That's
fly
good.
here, on the fly.
We now have an outro. Thank you, Chris.
We'll see you next time
Thank
after
you.
you shower.
Oh my God.
All right. This is Greg, the Single Guy, coming at you with another episode, and I am joined by Kent the Cat Guy.
Hello.
Here in the desert. How you doing, Kent?
Hey, I'm Awesome Possum. Thank you, buddy.
Fantastic. And of course, we have the lovely JP Mint. Jacqueline, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great this fine morning, coffee in hand and ready to talk to our guest, my friend.
Chris,
That's right. We're going to be talking with our new guest, Chris. Chris is coming to us from Colombia, and we are saying hello. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you letting me be on here with you.
Hey, Chris, tell our listeners what city you're calling in from.
I am living in Bucaramanga, Colombia.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, for sure. Some people call it Bucaraware because really no one really knows the city, and there's a reason for that.
Can you tell us where it is geographically, especially from Bogota or coastline, not coastline, jungle?
About 1,000 meters up. We're close to the border of Venezuela. 7-hour drive to Venezuela from here. So we have a lot of people from Venezuela living in this area. It's about a 30-minute flight to Bogota or 8-hour drive.
Ooh.
And in the tropics, as you go up, it gets cooler. So we're 1,000 meters up, and it's still probably 30 degrees every day centigrade, right? And it's hot. It's hot here. It's hot and humid.
Oh.
Even at 1,000 meters up, you still get that humidity, that hot weather, lots of rain, maybe.
Decent amount of rain, but really, I'm sweating right now as we speak, and I told you I didn't shower, so it's not a good look. I'm really happy with it.
Listeners, we have guests from all over the place and all different kinds of bodily awareness. So, yes, we have a very sweaty Chris Lang. He's self-defined as the non-showering guy.
Yeah.
Welcome to our show, Chris, from Colombia. Or not originally from Colombia. You are living there now. Is it a small city, by the way?
About
how big is it?
About 500. No, sorry, it's more than that. 1.5 million, I think it is.
That's a nice size.
Well, it's not too small.
That means you probably have an Indian restaurant, a Vietnamese restaurant, Chinese restaurant.
It's not a touristy place, so it really is. It's a good experience for living in Colombia and being there's very few foreigners here. So you do get immersed and you have that, but there's no international. The international food is very poor, so that's one thing that we miss here. So if you guys have any suggestions or any people you want to send our way, we are accepting applications for visas.
My suggestion is just enjoy the Colombian food. I love the food down there. I was in Venezuela next door. Maybe we had better food. I don't know, but it was fantastic. So I hope that you enjoy the Colombian food while you're there.
And how long have you been there?
I've been here. It's my second year in Bucaramanga, and I've been in Colombia now. It's my fifth year in Colombia. So
I'm going to volunteer to go there just because of the name.
I know.
And I'm serious. I love names like that. It's fantastic.
It really rolls
almost as good as
off the tongue.
Antananarivo.
I want to hear you guys say it. Are you ready?
Bucaramanga.
Yeah, I got it. Bucaramanga.
Cucamonga.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Not bad. Not bad. So it looks like you're not very far from the Venezuelan border. Is there a mountain between you and Venezuela? Is that why it takes maybe 7 hours to get there?
It's all mountainous. Yeah, switchbacks. The roads are pretty good, but it's 7 hours of throw up in the car. And,
and then you buy gas and come back.
Yeah, I had a friend that would fly, but the percentage of crashes was starting to go up and up. So she decided to keep her family safe. She would drive instead of fly. So I think that was a good call.
And is it one of those drives where you're kind of skirting the guardrails, looking over the sides, kind of that drop off when you're driving the switchbacks?
It's Colombia, Kent. We We don't believe in safety. It's safety last, right? So
Okay, now I'm picturing
It's Colombia,
I'm
Kent.
picturing the goats and the chickens on the bus. Is that a fair portrayal, or is it high speed express buses like here in Mexico?
definitely, I haven't seen a lot of chicken buses here in the city. I do miss those, but it's more of the coach buses or the minivans, or private transportation. That's actually pretty affordable to hire a driver and take you anywhere. So I don't have a car. I walk. I walk everywhere.
Wow. Well, Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey that brought you to Bucaramanga, Colombia?
Nice, Kent.
Sure. Well, 2005, Kent. I bought a book called Teaching English Abroad by Susan Griffin. Susan Griffith. And that changed my whole life. And it was a book that told you different English schools in different countries, different wages you would make, what nationalities they were targeting, what you can expect for housing, any other accommodations. And I was just really excited about going abroad. And I just jumped in and went to Japan. And that book really did change my life and started me down this path. Taught English there for a while, taught in Bolivia and in Nicaragua. And then I had to go home because Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger said, you have to do 2 years in a public school to get your credential as a teacher. And so he forced me to go home. I still hold it against him to this day. But
You will come back.
You will come back.
So you
Sorry, I had to do that. I'm sorry.
you grew up in, well, it sounds like you grew up in California.
yes, yeah, I'm from Los Angeles.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
We're West Coasters. I'm from Seattle.
All right, nice. Greg, where
I'm not. I'm
We
not.
are.
Kent is saying we. Kent, this is Colombia,
I
Kent.
meant Chris and I. I don't know where the rest of you are from.
yeah.
At least one of you is Canadian. I know that much.
Okay, can we just pause? I want to hear everything else because I know there's a lot more, but can we just go back for a second? So you were in Japan. Can you tell us a little bit about that and where you were and where was it those language schools after school, or was it in a public school, or was it a private school?
So I worked at a language school in Nishichiba. It's about 45 minutes outside of Tokyo. So it was also
Gesundheit.
another one. It was
Don't
To
interrupt him. Come
Nichi
on.
Chiba, I would like to say on behalf of the ITP hosts, we apologize for making fun of your town. We understand you're very respectful, and we're sorry.
and knowing Japanese culture, they would apologize to you for even having to apologize. Wonderful place. My first experience, Jacqueline, was you couldn't read the language, right? There was hiragana and katakana, I think it was called, which were made for foreigners to help better read Japanese, but it was still characters. So it was, and there wasn't a lot of English at that time. It was 2005. So I remember literally walking down the aisle of the supermarket trying to figure out which one was bleach and having to open the bottles and smell to see
Ooh,
you couldn't read it.
nice.
I like to get high, but not like that, right? So, but it was like,
At least you didn't taste it to see, is this bleach? Is this bleach?
when you first experience abroad on your own, not knowing the language, it was a big eye opener. There was a lot of growth in that. Not even just learning how to shop, but right, everything, every little thing you take for granted. How to use the washing machine. You can't read any of the buttons.
How to shower.
How to shower. Who to
Still
call.
an issue I might throw out.
It is an issue for today.
But
Being a principal, you have no time.
were
It's
you
terrible.
were you put into a housing situation, or did you also have to find your own place?
This company, which still exists today, was really good about that. They had a transitional house for people that were coming in, and then they set you up with housing. And like if you've been to Japan, it's very dialed in terms of transportation, public transportation. So train rides, bus rides. You didn't need a car. You can get around easily. But then at that point, 2005, communicating with back home was difficult. It wasn't like what we have now, right? So just figuring out the calling cards, how to use the phone, all these little things that we take for granted these days. And in your home country, you take for granted no matter what. When you leave the country, you learn, wow, like there's a lot to learn, right? There's a lot of growth that needs to be happening. Get out of your bubble. So,
And how long did you
there it
end up
is.
staying there?
About a year and a half.
Okay.
So
And then you headed to Central America, South America.
I went to Bolivia, taught English there for a while. In La Paz, Bolivia. That was awesome. Indigenous cultures surrounding us. I mean, trekking in the trekking to the glaciers there, and just having for $10 you can go take a day away to go trek up this mountain that it feels like no one's ever been there. You're on this unknown landscape, right, with frozen lakes and I don't know, just llamas and alpacas. And
Hey, Chris, did you go to Bolivia with a job beforehand, or did you arrive in country and just start looking for a job?
I used that same book, Kent. That same book. It was it was like gold back then, and ended up getting a job, $5 US an hour, which was big money there, but of course for us it wasn't. But it's all about the experience, right? So you get there, you're 2 miles up, you're at 14,000 feet, you're more than 2 miles up, and you get off the plane and you can't breathe. It's freezing cold, and there's oxygen tanks literally laid across the walkway as you exit the plane. And
For people as they were getting off the plane, they needed oxygen.
Apparently people do pass out because it's such a shift of altitude, right? You go from sea level and you're walking at 14,000 feet. And so I didn't see anyone pass out, but I remember shopping and walking up 2 flights of stairs to get to my apartment and just having to stop after one flight, and you're gassed. You're just out of breath. You're just carrying a couple bags of groceries, but you're that high up where you live on top of a mountain, right?
I remember distinctly that when I lived in Central America, and it's a different story, but in Honduras, when we would land, everybody would clap like we made it safely, and it was so strange. Did you experience that when you flew into this airport too, or no?
Everywhere I went in Argentina, they clapped. I didn't. It was pretty funny, but in Bolivia, no. In Colombia, very rarely.
No, in Bolivia,
very
okay.
Rarely. Yeah.
So then from Bolivia, and how long did you stay there, Chris, in Bolivia? And then you went on.
It was about 6 months there. Then I flew to Costa Rica for another job, and it felt a little too much like America. There was a church's chicken, and there was a few things where I thought, this is not different enough for me. So I went to Nicaragua, took a bus to Granada, and found a job there teaching English as a volunteer, and stayed there for another 6 months. So.
I get the feeling that it was almost like a backpack kind of teach English to pay for your travels in this case, right?
100%, a working vacation, which I still feel like I'm doing that now, except I'm working a lot harder than the vacations I get, but that's okay.
When did you begin to make that shift from kind of backpacking city to city, living out of the backpack to, thinking, I better get a job and start settling somewhere? How did that happen?
Yeah, there's a better life, a quality of life with teaching full time, in a general education classroom, right? A regular school that we're used to from August to June. There's a much better quality of life. And so I decided to get my teaching credential and then do the same thing I had been doing, of going abroad and finding longer contracts and better money. And so that happened when Governor Schwarzenegger forced me to go back to Los Angeles and work at a public school. And so that was my first gig in a Title I school, where it was a different world from my travels and from what I ever experienced as a kid coming up in public school. Taught me a hell of a lot, but I can't go back to public school. Let's put it that way.
So you did your 2 years and then you struck out on the road again?
I did 3 years there, and then I took the leap and went to Colombia for the first time. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, for the first time. So this is now where you're at in Colombia. This is kind of a return for you to Colombia. Is that right?
This is my second stint, yes. Yeah, second round here. And now I brought my wife with me, who is Colombian, but I met her in Los Angeles. So it's a small world no matter how you look at it.
You met her back in the days where you were teaching.
This was my second round back in Los Angeles, too. I guess maybe 2 is my lucky number, Kent. I mean, that must be it, because I met her on eHarmony in Los Angeles in a small, chocolate coffee shop. And she happened to be from a place that I basically lived in my first time around here in Colombia. And so it was pretty
right.
Cool. And it was close to that. Yes, Greg.
Are you just making up names over there, Greg? JP, let's draft an apology, shall we?
I'm practicing my Spanish again.
So I think we have to thank Governor Schwarzenegger for the finding your wife. Am I right about that?
That's true. I should thank him for sure.
All right, so we did the South America. We went back to California. I don't know why I'm saying we. You went back to California, got your credential. You worked in a public school for a couple years, and then moved to Colombia. But this time, you were at an international school. And can you tell us a little bit about that process? Did you go to a job fair? Did you sign up with a recruiter? How did you learn about this whole other world of international teaching?
I went to a fair in Iowa that they still have from the University of Northern Iowa. Have you guys been there? Have you guys gone through that fair before? Yeah. All right.
He's got
Did you
he's
find a job?
3 times.
two
Yeah.
two more and he gets a free coffee.
They kept kicking me out.
I remember flying into Iowa. I think it was February, and I left LA where it was probably 75 degrees, decent weather, and you fly into it's an iceberg, and you're like, what? Why am I here? And why is the whole world coming here? And I don't know why, but it works. It was a great experience going through the fair. I actually found a job in Mexico in Guadalajara, and at that time, I think it was 2010, 2010. And at that time, there was a lot of cartel noise going on, a lot of kidnappings at the border. And, from Los Angeles, my family's in Southern California. So we're very aware of what's happening. And of course, we know media has its own bias. But we had people that were living in Mexico and have family in Mexico that were experiencing things. And so I had to turn that job down. And it was hard. Of course, it was hard. I was excited. I actually went out with the person that was the principal at the time. They took out the cohort, and we were all excited to do this journey. And then she told us a story about how the lawyers across the street from the school were gunned down because they lost the case for the cartel, and they had to shut the school down and do the shooter drill stuff. And it wasn't a drill, right? It was active shooter. And we're at dinner. I'm like, and I'm from LA. I was in Title I school where there was a lot of crazy shit happening. But I thought, and my family was giving me shit, so I had to turn that down. Went to Colombia. Now, most people say Colombia is worse, right? People are like, Colombia. But Jacqueline, I don't know how your experience has been. This is obviously years ago, but Colombia has actually been better. So.
It's important that we hear this because when you hear the real story about living down there from the directors that are straight up with you, they don't want you to land in the country and just then figure it out and just like hightail it home after 3 days, because that happens sometimes because people don't ask questions, and you have to decide for yourself like you did. It just wasn't the right time to do that for that country. You can go back and teach some other time in Mexico when it's cooled down, or the politics might be a problem. It might be recovering from something else that really shook the country. It might have been a coup. We've had different stories on here, and I appreciate your candidness because we're not out to scare anybody, but this is a real life situation when you're making these choices at job fairs. And even if you're in the middle of Iowa and someone's telling you this over a burrito at a some kind of fake Mexican restaurant, right? Job fairs can go by really fast, and there's lots of different pressures on you to make a decision. And if you don't know these stories that you've probed, and it's not from the media, you're hearing it from somebody that's down there in that country, and that's really important. So
that was great, Greg. And being on the other side of this now, where I'm a principal, I believe that you have to be transparent and honest with people, or else, like you said, and they'll be gone in 3 days. They'll pull a runner, make your life miserable. And so it's just not worth it to try to trick them to get here. And it's not what it is, right? And so
that's not even when you have bad things about it, or things that are uncomfortable or political or something like danger. They're all relative, right? And I think you're right. The transparency is one thing that I want from a leader, that I'm looking for. I'm sort of evaluating at a job fair or in an interview. And I love the transparency. When someone says to me, "Yes, Honduras is dangerous, but when you get down here, we take care of you. We teach you how to live here to be safe, and you will enjoy it. It's an opportunity you can't miss." So therefore, it's something to think about. So if you're doing that, more power to you, because then people are going to come and want to work for you.
Chris, let me ask you a question. As a principal, are you involved in recruiting teachers to your school?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time doing that.
So what are some of the questions, or, how do you sell it? People come to you, they might have never even heard of where you're at or your school. How do you,
Bucaramanga.
yeah, right? How do you get people excited about your school or interested in wanting to come to your school?
We are an hour to 2 hours away from the outdoor adventure capital. I guess we're considered the outdoor adventure capital of Colombia. So there's whitewater rafting, there's caving, there's there's paragliding, rappelling, all those things. So if you're into that, there's
Monkeys?
monkey. No, I haven't seen any monkeys actually.
I'm not going. We have Kent.
One monkey.
Oh, Kent.
We have one monkey. He's on the show right now. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I love the outdoor adventure, the jungles of Colombia. It sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun if you're into that. I mean, if you're we tend to draw younger teachers, a little less experienced teachers that really are want the working vacation, which is what we're selling here, right? Good quality of life. You can walk to work, no need for a car. Most teachers live next door to school, so how great is that? There's no traffic to deal with. There's no stress. Everything is within. I mean, you can go 20 minutes and jump off the mountain right next to me and paraglide. And so there's a lot of fun. If you're an adrenaline junkie, a lot of fun things to do here. We went rafting a couple months ago for my wife's birthday. It was a good time. It's a half day adventure. Everything is really cheap here in terms of services. Everything, like we had a dog walker. We paid them $15 a month to come walk our dog every day. Housekeepers are affordable. So that quality of life piece, it just continues to get better and better, right? And really, the school itself it's had its ups and downs, but the core of elementary school has been solid. It's like a family feel, a good community. And so when we do interviews, after they pass the first round with me, we bring in teachers to talk with them also. So they can get a real feel for what the day-to-day looks like from a teacher. I try to recruit actually for personality matching, but I don't necessarily recruit someone that's pro school or against the school. It's like whose personality is going to match this teacher that could potentially be their partner, because we are a co-teaching model. And so a lot of that,
Yeah.
a lot of that kind of guessing and gambling on my end has worked out pretty good.
So your puzzle piece, because we're always talking about directors and principals trying to fit the right puzzle piece into the puzzle that they already exist. The school,
100%.
the school employees that are already there, and so yours is a little bit more challenging because of the co-teaching. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we have one local teacher in every classroom and one expat teacher in every classroom. So you're going to have a local partner who's a trained licensed teacher. And they are really the core of our school, right? Because the expats come and go. So it's really trying to empower them, because they were called assistants last year. This is a brand new model that we're making a shift culturally to make sure that everyone respects the Colombian teachers and values them, because really they're the core. And then we bring in the expats.
I love that.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, because they have the institutional memory. They're the ones that don't. They see the expat sort of revolving door in a sense, and they're the ones that are carrying the ship on.
100%. But
Hey, one question about is it a 2-year contract or is it a 1-year contract renewal?
for teachers,
How does
it's a
that
2-year
work for you
contract
guys?
because of the cost for visas and flights and everything.
Excellent.
And for admin, it's a 3-year contract.
Who are your students? Where are they mostly from?
99% are Colombian, well-off people here in the city. It's just, I guess if you're from Southern California, you know how things are spilling over. California spilling into Colorado and other places. It's similar, like Bogota spilling into Bucaramanga. And so people come here to kind of slow down from the big city and the grit and maybe some of the danger, because it's a big city and it's just a little more of a smaller mid-sized city. So we have some people that commute to Bogota, but mainly that's the gist. And we have international families. We have a few families, but that's all we have in terms of. And so we call ourselves international school, but I wouldn't say it's an international school. It's more of a private school for Colombian citizens.
So it's more of a host national
sure.
international school where your students are host national, and your staff, as far as expats, are they from around the world too?
No, we try to diversify. So our staff is international. We really try to diversify the staff to give the kids and the country, an eye-opening experience. So we have people from Jamaica, from Scotland, from England. We have people from Canada, from the States, from Kenya and Nigeria. And then, of course, we have a ton of Colombians as well.
That is fantastic, because not only is it important to have an excellent teaching staff, but to have an international school. If it's a host national school, you really need to build up that staff then to show the kids all the different kinds of flavors of people that there are in the world, all the different colors and languages and stuff like that. I think that's necessary, and I'm so happy to hear you say that there's like not four token white people and then the rest Colombians, right? And that's the fact you have Australian English or you have British English or you have Jamaican and you have a flavoring of different languages and cultures is so important for the kids. So I love that nature of your school. It sounds really powerful, and I would want to be a part of that staff coming from the U.S. because I don't always want to teach with U.S. staff. I want that flavor, that mixing bowl of
Greg, you're
culture.
pretty good at this.
I've been working a long time on those words, and I was practicing for hours before we got on
I
here.
mentioned, Chris, that
going back.
Greg has written a book, Finding the Right Fit, www.amazon.com or wherever you find your finer books. He is a published author. I don't know if you knew that.
I remember reading in the very beginning of the very first email I received about a month ago, but thank you for telling me that again, because it is important. I 100% agree. The fit is everything.
Well, I do we do have a copy for you. I mean, I have a copy for you already, waiting for you to just sign in the code and everything. That was sent with you just for being on our show. And I figured if we have one person from every show, then at least more than my mom will read it. And we'll have like 60 episodes, 60 people read it. Might have 62 people have read it then. Maybe if Kent, did you ever read it? I don't know. He just keeps plugging it for me. It's so fun. But you know what is interesting, Chris, is that when I went out in 2001, I never had a book.
We didn't have the Susan Griffith.
Yeah, after I sent in my check, then you and I sent me their information, and it's all what you and I wrote out, right? The information packet for candidates. And I didn't have anything. I landed in Iowa. I was like, what? But anyway, that's a long time ago, and I had the same sort of experience you did, except for the Colombian telling me stories, or I mean, the Mexican telling me stories about shootings and stuff. But my experience is, yeah, very similar to yours. And I'm just happy to hear. I'm happy to have another person here on our show from South America, because that lifestyle is, yes, it's exciting for especially the younger ones or the older ones like me that are after the adventure. And you can live really well on a lower salary compared to maybe Middle East or the Southeast Asia or Northern Asia, where they have the higher packages. But the cost of living, you mentioned it already, the cost of living is so low for an expat that we can actually live very well down there and explore all over the South American area and be in an accredited international school and have a job just like you would in the States in Los Angeles with Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? But more enriching. All right, let's take a moment for a little commercial about how to get in touch with us. You can, of course, find all four of us at the itpexpat.com. That's www.itpexpat.com.
Or you could also find us at email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Or if you're into Facebook, we have a new Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/ITPexpat, where you can find all kinds of inside information about ITP Expat.
You can also find us on Instagram at ITP Expats. That's with an S. ITP Expats is our handle.
All right, and thank you, listeners. We have over 100 countries represented by our listeners, and though we're not monetized, we are here for you, and we would like to thank all of you for listening. So let's get back to the show.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your travels since you've returned to Colombia?
I fought pretty hard to get to this position. There's not a lot, if there's 80 teaching positions, there's only one principal position, right? So it's not like it's easy to come by. And so I have my master's in teacher leadership, and I have my principal's license. And then I got hired for this job. I went through 8 different interviews to get it, and it was a lot. Yeah, you meet parents, you meet the Stuco, you obviously meet the directors and anyone in leadership, athletic director. You meet the parent. Oh, sorry, I meant to say the parents. And then I met my current boss because they had a turnover in leadership. So it was a lot. It was a lot. And then I got married, and I moved to start this job 6 days later. So we planned for a wedding, got married, and then got on a plane to get here. And so we didn't have time for a honeymoon. We didn't have time to travel because even though I didn't start this job officially until July 12th, I think it was July 17th, excuse me. Left July 12th to get here. Didn't get to travel a lot, Jacqueline. That's where I was going with that. Didn't get to travel a lot because I started working in March for a job I wasn't paid for until July. Because when you're a principal, you start when you start. That's it. You know.
So I have a question for you. Was it harder to interview with your wife, your soon-to-be wife's family, and all of those interviews, or was it to get the principalship? Which one was more difficult?
eHarmony vets the parents too. Did you know that eHarmony actually vets all the parents and the family?
Listen, Chris, may I point out that he's the single guy? You gonna
right. How about those?
What do you want me to harmonize too, Ken?
Dating apps, right? Are you feeling those, or you're not feeling those?
Well, the camel dating apps are not really that healthy out here, I guess. I suppose we're going to have to edit that one out. So there's an apology going out to the Middle East. To tell you the truth, Chris, you asked me that, and in all seriousness, I haven't done the dating apps before. And when I've moved to different countries, most of the time I have dated locals. And I remember dating a judge in Honduras and meeting her entire family, being like put to the test, and having her dad call 5 times during the first date at like a TGI Fridays. And then I had to go to her house the next date and meet the entire family. It's just for the Latin community, it's very family oriented, and I have great memories of that. But to get to the point, I have never tried a dating app, and I don't really think I want to. I'm more of a face-to-face kind of person, right? Just like interviewing. But anyway, yeah, that's me. We want to hear about your travels, though. How many countries do you think you've been to, Chris, as a traveler, not just teaching, but as a traveler around the world?
I had to report that on a visa somewhere recently, and I think it was 28 countries. So a good chunk.
Not bad at all. Yeah.
So if I fast forward a little bit, so I flew to Colombia 6 days after I got married. We had a very short stint in Santa Marta on the beach as a mini honeymoon, and then waited 6 months and then went to Argentina for our honeymoon, and spent a couple weeks there. And we like to travel, especially me. I like to travel. I like to experience the place as best I can. I don't want to go there for a weekend. I want to do the best I can to experience as many parts as possible and get a variety of experiences. Where in Argentina, we had a part where we road tripped through northern Argentina with the indigenous culture. And then we went to the glaciers down very far south and did some cruises around the glaciers and trekking and things like that. It just try to have a variety, and so you get a really good taste, because chances are you're not going to be able to go back. Right? There's so many places to see, and life's so short, and money runs out quick. It's like gotta do the best.
Says the man who's been to Colombia twice, California a couple times. But yeah, no, you're right. You don't necessarily foresee a return to some of these countries. I want to ask, actually, does anybody, short of maybe naming some countries, because we might be having to write a number of apology letters, but have you ever been to a place where you're like, yeah, this is a check mark and I'm not going to be returning? I think I've probably had about 3 or 4 of those kinds of experiences.
I think for him, it's California.
Right? Yesterday I read, Kent, that housing's up 127%.
Oh, it's huge.
To the national average. 120. That should never exist. That stat. That's a crazy stat.
Absolutely.
That's a great question, Jacqueline. I feel like I definitely try to find the best, right? The best, and whatever's uncomfortable, you're going to be uncomfortable. That's a part of the fun. And if it's too uncomfortable, it's going to end eventually. You got to tough it out, or you just drink enough beer where you forget where you are. And
Well, I tell you what, here's a good shout out. We had a guest on prior to this interview, and he is in Curacao.
James.
James, thank you very much. James Joubert, and he was telling us all about Curacao, and Curacao is real close to you. So if you get a chance to go to the ABCs, maybe you have, you should definitely go there and dive in Bonaire and
I
go
have
to
visited
Curacao. Have you done
Yeah, I
that?
went to Venezuela, and then that was pretty close to Caracas, and so we went to Curacao to have a little beach vacation. Super pretty, very pretty place. Very expensive though. I remember even then the taxi ride was like $50 US, and when you're coming from Latin America for one taxi
Wow.
ride, yeah, you have to really that has to be a pretty good taxi ride. I mean, it better be.
You gotta save up for the
Very
taxi
good
ride.
taxi ride. Chris, tell us about you and JP Mint intersect at, I believe, Oman. I was
Oh yeah,
hoping to hear
tell
a
us a
little bit about
story.
your
Yeah.
time in Oman and just a little bit about how you and JP Mint met. That story as well.
Yeah, we were neighbors. We spent 1 year together, if I remember right. She was my downstairs neighbor. She was very good about giving out bottles of wine. She would bribe you for rides to the airport. That was what she was notorious for. We only spent a year together, and I was wrapped up in a very difficult relationship at that time, which I'd love to share about her and give all her personal information out to you. But I guess that wouldn't be professional of me. I'm just kidding.
That'll be on the Patreon. Join us later on the Patreon where we hear Chris's difficult relationship. After
So
he
was that just
showers.
1 year, Chris? I swear it was. Well, I mean, not to say that it felt longer, but I swear we were friends for a good couple of years. Because, I mean, we would join the board game. There was a board game club, and Chris and I were very competitive. I remember that much. And playing on the floor because
What
sometimes
was it? Beer pong?
no, playing on the floor because sometimes the games would spread out so much. Civilization or Settlers of Catan.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I make a comment about that? Well, I'll let you guys get back to your
Reminiscing.
history together. But you brought up board games, and I want to give a piece of advice to everybody that's out there listening. We have listeners in about 100 different countries. Some have been overseas a long time. Some are thinking about going overseas, Chris, right? And it's great to hear from you about all these things. But when you guys played board games in Oman, did you use the local currency? Because if you use local currency like we did in Honduras, we had 17 local lempiras to a dollar. So the money was, we had a lot of cash on hand, right? And literally you'd win this big pile of money, but on US standards or Canadian standards it was like enough to go and buy a burger, right? So we had all these bills, and what the idea though is, and ever since then I have played board games in every country, because especially when you first land there, you get to know the currency. And it's a digital world nowadays, I know, but we still, a lot of the countries are very cash driven. And I love doing that. So that's my piece of advice for everybody out there.
Did we play for money, Chris?
I was gonna
Did
say,
I did
Greg,
I miss
Greg
that?
never played board games for me. I don't know where you got.
Oh, what kind of board games are you
Monopoly,
playing
are you
over there,
kidding me?
Greg?
Monopoly. We always played board games with money. Come on. You can make any game with any rules.
No, we just had bragging
If you're
rights.
in London, though, you need to drink with fingers of beer, pints of beer. You drink a finger of beer for every 100 on the boardwalk or whatever. That's a board game of drinking. But this is a family type of
This is a
discussion,
family
you
show.
guys.
We
This is
played board
family. We don't
games
talk
for
about drinking and
bragging rights.
gambling.
For the next week when we got back, if somebody started to win, and I think was it Andrew or was it
There was some
I
targeting
don't know. I think
going on.
I feel like Andrew won a lot, but there were just like people that won every single week, and they would start to get the reputation. So then, if there was any kind of sometimes we would have to split into two rooms because we would be so many people that wanted to play different board games, and then so we'd split into two rooms. And if Andrew was in one room, I would try and pick the other one because I'd want to win.
I'm sure he's gonna love to hear that.
So you guys played for bragging rights. Right. Okay, listeners, if you want to, dial in, send us an email and tell us, would you rather play board games with Greg and all the fun people that he's with and have drinking and money and stuff, or do you want to play for bragging rights with JP Mint and Chris? You have to just send us an email.
What's important to tell you, Greg, everyone in the Middle East makes the same amount of money, so no one has to worry about money there, right? In that sense.
Ooh, you make a
I
lot
don't
of
want to go
money
take
there,
money from the
huh?
locals, but we all had pretty good packages as teachers, right? So money wasn't really.
How did you get to Taysom though? That's something I never knew. Did you go to the Northern Iowa Fair again, or?
It was a Skype interview with the current principal at the time. And then we actually, it was a couples interview. So me and my ex doing it together. And then we passed to the director interview, and he asked me a question about when was the last time I was culturally insensitive. And he threw me off, right? Because I was like, who asked that
Whoa.
question? And my ex is sitting next to me at the time, right? We're interviewing together. And I could
She rats you out.
he grabs my leg, and I'm like, oh no.
Tony, remember with that waiter?
Right.
She starts listing off 5, 6, 7 incidents.
And I stopped being a professional at that time, right? I kind of lost my professionalism, and I said, well, a teacher brought to my attention that a kid was watching porn on their iPad, and she squeezed my leg even harder. I said porn. That's supposed to say porn. It's supposed to be inappropriate material. Kind of like, porn. And then it was fifth grade. But this computer teacher came to me, a very conservative Catholic Colombian gentleman, and caught this fifth grade girl watching porn on the iPad. And he came to me, and he was like blown away by this. And I took him right to the principal and said, "You got to tell her what happened." And he was mortified. And that's when I really.
That's why he told you.
Yeah, I know. I totally blew it. I totally was very insensitive to how that was going to land for him being who he was. So yeah,
And you're like, more detail. Tell him more detail.
seriously. Total sight. But I ended up thinking I blew the job, actually, Jacqueline. I thought I blew this. And I remember being at the gym. I'll tell you the story. I was at the gym, and I was crying, and at that time I had underwear in my hand. I just started wiping my tears in my underwear. I felt so low. I thought there's no way I got this job. I blew it for me and my girlfriend. And then next thing you know, we got the email saying we'd love to have you. So.
Wow.
So you were in the gym. You were in a gym working out. You started crying, and you wiped your face with underwear.
That is
I'd be crying
one
too.
of the saddest stories, Chris, that I've heard in so many ways. Wow. Amazing. You're kind of a sensitive guy, aren't you there, Chris? I mean, yeah. Wow.
So from Oman, we lost contact. And where did you go from there?
So I was in Oman. I was trying to date after my ex had left, and I don't know if you had the same experience, Jacqueline, with dating in Oman, but it was very difficult because our job started very early, and a lot of things happened at night, late there for people that had different types of jobs, and I just couldn't go out at 9 o'clock at night as a teacher, because you're up at 5-ish in the morning and you have to be on with kids. There's no mercy.
Absolutely.
Right. So I never got into that nightlife, and I never really dated at school after that. I was pretty much traumatized to find a girlfriend that I worked with. And so I decided I'm going to go home, and I'm going to go home really to look for my wife. And so that was my thing. I left a great package in Oman, went back to California, and found a job at a very progressive liberal school called Crossroads in Santa Monica. And learned a lot about being a white ally and about doing some DEI work and going a different direction. Because in the Middle East, of course, it's mainly a very conservative area where you can't really talk about being gay or right openly. And where I went into a place in Santa Monica where we're teaching about what that means to be gay, non-binary, etc. In kindergarten, they're getting 3 different dolls where one is a boy, one's a girl, and one's non-binary. And they're talking about these different things that are super, super cool and super important. So it was a big flip in a different direction. And that's where I learned a lot in a different way as not just a professional, but as a person as well. Spent 4 years there and worked on getting out of teaching because that was my 20th year when I finally left. And I was really getting bored and tired and needed some challenges. And so that last year or two, I was just I love kids, but I just wanted to get away from them. Like, come on, I gotta find something else.
I say that
Anyone
every
else
day.
go to a restaurant? Anyone else go to the restaurant in the summertime? I would come home and there's certain restaurants that actually have hostess or hosts that seat you in a section, and I would say non-children section,
Yeah.
please, teacher on holidays. And they would look at me and laugh, and I'd be like, no, seriously, don't put me in the family section.
Smoky, not smoky, no problem, but just no kids.
But yeah,
That's every vacation
I
for
hear
me.
that. I hear that, Chris. Like the need to get out of the classroom and to also to help teachers. Like I found that in my getting up to my 20th year of teaching, I was wanting to shift my focus from student centered to teacher centered, and that's when I realized that I'd been bitten by the admin bug. So you went ahead and you started on your master's. Was that when you did that?
I started in Oman the year before I left, Master's in Teacher Leadership through the University of Northern Iowa. So went back to UNI in a different way. Made some great connections there. I really love that school and love what they're trying to do internationally. Can't say enough about them. And that program was all obviously synchronous and asynchronous, so you can do it wherever you are in the world. And worked on getting my license as well. And then once I had that, I just started looking for jobs. I probably applied to about 40 schools, a little over 40 schools before I found this job. And I only ended up getting 3 schools to respond back to me. And so even though you have the right credentials, if you don't have any experience in the position, it's very difficult to get your foot in the door.
It's also with the timing, though, I would say, right, Chris? Timing is also very important. It's everyone's got those puzzles that we talked about before. You have a puzzle that you're working on. A lot of schools like to groom from within, and since some schools actually invite their staff to move up through the ranks and try out and become assistant principals and then principalship. So you're right, as together with the fact that you hadn't had any experience, true experience yet with the principalship, that must have been difficult. But timing also. It's a big puzzle still, right? I will never be an admin though. I will stay with the kids. I don't mind as long as I can go on vacation, go diving without any
Okay.
kids on board. I'm good to go for the next 10 years or so. And Kent, I know as long as he's got a cat around, he's always with kids at school. They just love him. They won't leave him alone. His lunch is full of kids. Other teachers are running away from the school at lunch, and he's there with all the kids in his room, even through lunch. It's amazing, right, Kent?
Yes.
Yes.
Chris, I did have a question for you. I mean, I wanted to underscore something that you said. I think people somehow, our listeners in the United States think, well, when I'm teaching overseas, 5 in the morning won't be as early as it is in the United States. And I got news for all of our teachers: 5 in the morning is still 5 in the morning, no matter where you are. Believe me, I feel that. Chris, you're married. Did your wife teach there with you?
No, she's a videographer for Welcome with Dignity. It's a nonprofit for asylum seekers.
Oh, that's great.
I think I said that right. I hope I didn't mess that up. Sorry, babe. I, I think it's called. Let's start over. Okay.
All of a sudden, there's like a pot in the air flying at him. Say it again, honey. Say it again, right?
She's a videographer for a nonprofit that helps asylum seekers.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great.
So I'm still trying to figure out the timeline. You got your master's and principalship credential, started in Oman but finished it in California. And then what made you decide, you know what, I'm not settled here. I don't want to stay in California. I want to head back overseas.
I had a good thing going in California. I was working as a co-teacher also, so I had a great partner, a great team. I was making good money, living in a back house, like renting a garage out, family discount. I mean, I had probably the best situation you could have in LA, but it was unstable in the sense that we didn't have a legal lease, and so it was anytime it could end. And the person that owned it was in his 90s. When it was a family friend, he ended up passing away this past year. There was a little bit of fear around housing, especially if you know anything about LA. There's a fear around housing, and so I was looking for something for us to be a little more stable, better quality of life, and just give us a better future and a little more I don't know. I mean, I know I said stable already, but really it is that like financial stability piece. I'm not really big on money, but I don't want to worry about if I can pay my rent or not. And in LA, that's a big worry for so many people. And so I thought teaching abroad, I'm done teaching, so I'll give this a chance and try to be a principal and or assistant principal. And so I just kept applying and applying until I ended up getting this job. I had to overcome some big
And
hurdles.
without going to a job fair, you didn't go back to uni.
I did not go back, but I did have to persuade my boss at the time, who was trying to fire me, to be my mentor and help me get my principal license. So that was really. You don't want to fire me, don't you want to be in my corner too? Like, can't you have it both ways? Where you want to fire me, but you also want to support me?
Oh,
So
Chris, that is brilliant. Chris, what does the next 5, 10 years bring for you? Do you think you set up Colombia for the long term? Maybe there's still some of the world that in front of you. What do you think?
yeah, now that I'm married, it definitely, it's a joint decision. She was born in Colombia but never lived here, so part of the reason why we're here now is for her to experience the culture, and her family's only a flight away. And she's a Spanish speaker, obviously, so there's lots of opportunity in Spanish speaking world. I think 3 years is probably a little too short to really do what you want to do in a school and get all the experiences necessary to move on to your next position. So this could be more of a 4 to 5 year gig. It all depends on my boss too, because once the director changes, then the ship of the school changes and how you fit changes, right? So there's a lot of factors there. But I think for now, the next 3 to 5 years, I think we're pretty secure here. I miss, I haven't really lived and worked in Africa. I would love to do that at some point in my career. But like I said, having a wife and what can she do, and then also she's never experienced the 17-hour time difference with family and all that crazy stuff that you're experiencing over there. And you can't watch the same things you're used to. You're detached from pop culture, and so there's some other barriers there, maybe language barriers. So I don't know. I've never been to the place that I've gone to work at, right? So I've just jumped in. So even with that book I was telling you about, I just went to Japan, never visited before, just went to Bolivia, just went to Nicaragua, just went to Colombia, just went to Oman, never even heard of Oman, never heard about it until I got to Colombia,
No, me neither.
right? And then boom, go, and it makes it even more exciting for me. Maybe not so much her, but so we'll see where after that, for the next 4 to 5 years, where we end up.
Let's talk a little bit about that safety net of teaching overseas and now being admin overseas, and the package, the benefits that are not just salary and not just saving the money that you're making, but also the fact that I would imagine in your position still that you have your housing paid for, you have your medical paid for, you have likely a transportation allowance that will take you to and from the States when you want, once a year, if that's what you want, professional development paid for. So are you still getting all those benefits even as an elementary principal?
Yep, all those benefits still apply. I even have 2 different medical insurances. We're very spoiled here. It is the same that we experienced in Oman, where if anything's wrong with your apartment, you just tell someone at the school, they come fix it. I mean, we're very, very spoiled. I walk 15 minutes to work. I have a beautiful apartment. I live on the 21st floor. I feel like, it's almost like a penthouse apartment. And and I worked to get here, obviously. But when I finally arrived here, Jacqueline, I felt like I made it. It was one of those feelings where, like, I finally, after all the 20 years of grit and getting my ass kicked sometimes, and right, and just like having some successes as well, but going through all those hurdles and continue to educate myself and grow, and then finally getting here, it was what I've been missing when I lived back home in LA, and what I continue to try to share with people that can go abroad is do it, right? Go abroad. There's so much more out there. There's so many better packages than what we deal with in the States.
You know, I'll be honest with you. Chris, I would love to work for you. I mean,
Oh, goodness.
you sound like you'd be a great boss and a nice guy. So I think that's what teachers really would like, don't you? That's what I like in a boss. Just
Thanks, Ken. That's very
yeah,
sweet.
absolutely.
It is definitely the best kept secret in education, isn't it, Chris? That we head overseas without really knowing what we're getting into, and then not only are we pleasantly surprised by what we find, but then we realize this is it for me. I'm not returning home. I mean, you're talking to three other career international school teachers here that will not likely return home to teach simply because of everything you've just mentioned, the
Hmm.
adventure, the excitement. I mean, you talking about that Japanese washing machine, I was right there with you in China with the Chinese washing machine. Like, what do these buttons actually
Right.
mean? And trying to scan with my Google Translate app, because then at that point, we're talking in the 2018, 2019. So there's Google translation apps, but they're still translating things that don't make sense. Like, what does this mean? Is it dry? Is it wet? Is it cold? Is it hot? But that's the excitement. I mean, doing your laundry overseas is an adventure.
I love that. That sums it up right there.
And showering. I remember making soup in Honduras. I won't forget this. I was making soup in Honduras in my kitchen because the maid had the day off or something, and I'm just standing there barefoot because it's hot. It is tropical hot, and we have no air conditioning. We have slat windows. I'm just dripping sweat. You take 5 showers a day. I'm making some soup for some
Yeah.
reason, and I go to stir it, and I get electrocuted because they don't ground the electricity in these apartments, school apartment, right? I was barefoot and I reached for the soup and the soup goes flying off because I just jumped away from it. I'll never forget. I was like, maybe that's why I don't cook anymore, right? It was so dangerous to cook soup there. I was like, oh my God. I will backpack though on what you said, Chris. You are echoing what a lot of our guests say is that you just jump in and you go experience. You don't even know where Oman was when you maybe looked into it and you've said, oh, that's where it is. You don't know this little island, this little country, this formerly known as country. Or is it Burma or Myanmar? Is it, what country is it called now? And so I think that you're echoing that reinforces what other people have said on this show and throughout is that it is the best kept secret, but the way to go about that sometime when you're younger and maybe when you're not married is to go somewhere that you don't know what's going to happen. You trust yourself to make that decision and you find a gem of a school in a country you'd never even heard of. You have to explain to people where it is on the map and you go home and they're like, what, where are you? And it's fantastic. So thank you for echoing that and reinforcing that point. It's one of my favorite points about overseas teaching too.
Hey, JP, we've heard from Greg. JP and Chris, you guys have any closing words for our listeners?
Well,
You
Oh, I
just,
do.
hey, how do I
Wait a
mute
second,
him? How do
Kent.
I mute him?
No,
There's got to
Kent.
be a switch.
Oh, wait, I better put record
Oh yeah,
because
that
it
was the
hasn't even
practice run.
recorded yet.
So Chris, we're now going to go ahead and start recording. Are
Yeah.
you ready, Chris?
Are you ready to interview now, Chris? Yep. Okay. How do I say that? Bucaramanga again? Okay. In all seriousness, before we get to our final segments, Kent, I do have one
What's that?
really important thing that I've been asking
Okay.
a lot of our guests. And I want to know of all the places that you go, Chris, are there let's say 2 or 3 things that you take with you when you go somewhere and to make you feel at home?
In my travels, I try to collect art of some kind, anything I put on the wall, right? So I say I have a lot of street art, and that's what I take with me wherever I go. And so right now, if you were to walk
Fantastic.
around my house right now, you would see pieces from all over the world, and those are to me like, even though they're street art, and it might have been a $2 piece off the street, right? That, or even something that is mass produced, and everyone in the country knows it's the cheesy piece from Africa. It doesn't matter to me because that's the reminder of that trip and that experience, and so my wall is full of that. My wife is not so happy about that, but she's come to terms with it, thankfully, and so
Follow up question. It's not necessarily, I don't know about you, maybe you agree. Do you agree with me when I say it's not about the value as much as it is the weight? When I take things from another country, if I do to remember, I either send it to a friend as a gift, or I have to just weigh it and make sure I can take it with me future wise. Do you agree with that? It's not the cost; it's the memory
It's
and the
memory.
weight.
I will pay whatever it costs to get that $2. That $2 piece is probably not worth 200, right? So I will pay what it costs to take it with me, for that reason of the sentimental.
Chris, take it from me. I moved with 54 boxes from China to Mexico, and about 4 or 5 of those were framed pieces of street art. And at some point in my travels, I shifted to the fridge magnet collection, because I was like, I cannot collect a piece of art from every single country and frame it, and then you don't have the wall space. I don't have the wall space. So I made that switch. So maybe I can just tell our listeners, if you're going to start traveling and you're going to start collecting things, don't go with the street art. Maybe take like 2 or 3 pieces of street art maximum, but start
Unframed.
that fridge magnet collection, because that is definitely lighter.
That is good advice. 100%. Don't do the shot glasses because those will break. They'll never survive. The fridge magnet,
Ooh, yeah.
that's the one.
Chris, you got social media? Someplace people could find you or your school?
I currently work at Colegio Panamericano. And so if you're interested in coming to Bucaramanga, Colombia, it's a PBL school, a STEAM school, co-teaching model. And if that sounds like something that you want to experience as a teacher and you want to be in Colombia and have a wonderful quality of life, please reach out. Would you like my email? Ken?
Yeah, well,
Well, we can put your LinkedIn.
We will
because
put
I
it-
think
yes.
you're very active.
Sure.
You're very active on LinkedIn.
Chris, don't give Kent your email. Don't give him your email.
So we'll put your LinkedIn on the show notes, and then they can also reach out to us here at ITP, because Chris is a close friend now of ITP. He's part of the family.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate the time. It was a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it as well.
He's part of the ITP. You're an alumni and part of the family. On behalf of our guest, Chris, JP Mint, and Greg, you could find Chris at the links below. You can find JP Mint at jpmintconsulting.com. You can find Greg in the staff lounge whenever there's a snack available. And you can find me in room 204. Thank you very much for coming, and we will see you next week. Yeah. Hey, you're a heck of a guy, buddy. I love it.